And welcome back. 3 minutes past the top of the hour. And of course, the news continues in a bit. But now, time for our discussion about data security in content happening around the country. I'd like to play some sound bites. But before I do that, let me read a tweet here by Solomon Solo. Now, Solomon Solo on Twitter says, people need to understand their rights to privacy and how this correlates with any person's ability to determine how their sensitive data will be used by others. As I wait for the sound bites, let me bring in Immaculate. And how hard, having occupied this office for the first time, how hard is it to police personal data and to ensure that my data as Ken is protected on social media and everywhere else? How hard is that for you?
Let me say that the crafters of the law understood that it's a very broad area. So one of the things they said is the issue around self-regulations and awareness creation. And I do understand it's a complete culture shift, because we are coming from a tradition of Africa where we are oral, we like sharing, and sharing is caring. So we like to tell people when we are in weddings, we like to tell people where our children are, we like to tell people what I did last evening. I mean, those are things we like to say. It's our character. So coming to from there as an office, one of our biggest responsibility has to create awareness about it. And I'm happy, one of the things, because you always have to look at the glass as half empty or half full. From a glass half full perspective, Kenyans are beginning to awaken on what it means. Data, when you say data is the new oil, that is what it means. That you may have a lot of information collected together, but when it is collected, segmented, it then becomes value.
Okay. How much of a risk, Kags, do we put ourselves into when we share all these details knowingly and unknowingly?
You know, it's really important for us as Kenyans to know that the most danger you can put yourself in is what we currently do. Nowadays, we take pictures of ourselves in front of our gates and show the gate number. I know where you live. The other day, I did a story where I actually went behind someone on the till at Naivas. I listened to them giving their number to the teller.
Phone number? Their phone number.
As soon as I had 0722000000, I memorized it. I checked on Truecaller. I found her email address. I found her name. With that information, I go into her Facebook, and suddenly I know where she went to school. I know where she has worked. I know she has children. I know her boyfriend is called Sam. All of this information. Now tell me, what can I do if I have that information? I even did it another time. I was telling somebody at a conference recently. I did it another time. And I even found where the person banked. So if somebody can be able to find this information, and they're bad people, can you imagine? Now we go even further and take pictures of ourselves, of our children, in front of their school, in front of our houses. And imagine places like Nyayo Estate and others are very recognizable places. So imagine a situation where I know so much information that I can come to your child and say, baby Ken, kuja, mimi nimetumwa na mama yako, twende na wewe. The child goes. There are so many dangers inherent in us sharing our personal data. But it goes even further. It goes to the extent of the fact that we can actually take our data and it is used by business people for money. How many of us can receive SMSs from loan people saying, I want to sell you a loan? And there are people, you've never given them your number. There's this book of truth that is in every security desk in Kenya. Where we go, we say, this is my ID number, this is my phone number, this is my name.
Of course, I have to confess, I give fake every day.
I give fake as well. But there are so many Kenyans who don't realize that they shouldn't give their real numbers. Yeah. And what is the purpose of that book anyway? In fact, I hope that Immaculate will stop that book entirely. Because of the fact that when we are giving that information, anybody can take that information and you find that you're a member of a political party that you did not intend to be in. There was a scandal like that recently. Anyone takes that information, those books are actually being sold for 10 bob per page. The askari just lets you take pictures, then you go and digitize the information. Then some sales guy calls you and he's selling you something that you are not intended to, whatever. All these scammers who are finding our numbers and reaching us is because that's how they're getting the numbers.
Okay.
So we have to be a little more cognizant of the fact that our data is actually important. So when now it gets to a company like this one that is even stretching the boundaries further,
With
to now
biometrics.
come and collect our biometrics. There was even a building here in Nairobi that was collecting our biometric information. There's another building that was saying they have to scan your ID, both sides of your ID, take your phone number, take your email address, take your information, and they have not told you, Ken, this is how we are keeping your data, this is what we are going to do about it. It's not legal, it's not right.
Is it lack of knowledge before I go to the sound bites?
I think lack of knowledge is
Lack
a
of knowledge.
major thing.
Okay, is that something that falls in your office?
In fact-
Educating, yeah.
In fact, I want to say some of those complaints, especially on buildings, have come to attention. And as at the Commission, we are in the tail end of subjecting what we call a guidance notes on private security firms. Once we get feedback, that is one of the things we'll be guiding them in terms of collecting this information, how they store. Because the collecting, there's a lawful basis. They are allowed to collect, to show, to identify you for purposes of security. The question is, what do they do and how do they store that information and how long? And that's what the office is doing. On the two buildings where they were collecting whatever facial recognition, we stopped them. We stopped them and even gave an enforcement notice, and it stopped forthwith.
I know of a building just near here.
Yeah.
When you drive in, they ask you for your ID, and they have a gadget that looks like a phone. That they scan your ID. You know, like they usually traditionally write the numbers.
Yes.
Now they don't. They take the gadget that looks like a phone and scan your ID, both sides, and let you in. It's the same thing, but it's a building next year. I want to proceed with our discussion, but first, let's play these sound bites to set the stage for our discussion tonight.
And the iris in particular has what we call very high entropy. And entropy is richness in data. And so with just the iris and the iris code, we can be able to create a database of unique humans around the world. Now this iris code then goes to a server, and that server checks, has this iris code registered or been verified before? And if the answer is no, it then generates a unique world ID. And this is generated cryptographically. We have engaged with the data commissioner and are licensed to operate in Kenya with data controller certificates.
Immaculate, comment on that last point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I did comment before we went on the break.
Yeah.
When people apply to the Office of the Data Commission, it's one of the requirements under the Data Protection Act. You cannot process data as a data controller or a processor unless you're given a certificate, which is a process that is guided in terms of the qualification. This is where what happens. Registration, you fill forms, which is online. We look at it and say, have you met these requirements? We give you a certificate. However, I must say this, the fact that you have been issued a certificate of controller does not mean you are compliant with the Data Protection Act. And we've said that. And in this case of WorldCoin, when we went on a spot check to some of the moons, we realized what they had said they were doing is not what they were doing.
Okay.
And we issued a letter of cessation for operation, especially on processing sensitive personal data, and that's the iris. That letter has never been revoked. We are in the process of investigating, because you cannot say you're giving consent to people as your basis and then keep shifting the mind. Today you say it's a lawful basis, you say we say no. You say tomorrow you say it's a legitimate interest, we say no. The next day you say it's consent. The next day you say are you not clear about what you're doing? And then where are you inducing people to give you their consent?
Is that the point you knew this was monkey?
That's our concern. Why are you inducing people to give you their consent? That is one. And then beyond that, because also, like I said, beyond us as data protection, it's people who are collecting personal information and in private hand. 1. 2, consumer protection. 3, issues around cryptocurrency. And they are swapping. You give them, you are assigned that, and then somebody says, no, I can pay you. That's a swap already of crypto. Those are concerns that don't just rest in the office of the data commissioner. It requires a roundtable. And that's, I want to reiterate what my CS said earlier today, saying this is an issue that requires a multi-sectoral approach in terms of addressing. So that we identify what are the concerns, what are the gaps, how can we address it. And then you're also having a conversation, Ken, in a country where you have a young population. Today it will be WorldCoin, tomorrow it will be another one. Why do I say that, Ken? We have young people in this country who have a very high risk appetite. They like to explore. So without knowing the repercussions, they are quick to adopt technology, which it may not be to their good in the long run.
They don't want to be left behind. But now that you mentioned what your CS said in the morning, one other thing he said that I like to read there is they are getting data voluntarily from Kenyans. Of course, it's voluntary. And the other thing he says, they are operating within the law.
I said that. We have had conversations with WorldCoin, not now, trying to understand what legal basis they have. We have never at any one point told them, go ahead, you're clean. The only thing they have from us is a certificate.
Okay.
And a certificate is not a confirmation of compliance.
Okay.
The Data Protection Act has 70 sections. One is Section 18 on registration only. And by the way, Ken, there are many institutions who are data controllers who we have issued certificate in different arenas. And then they went ahead to violate the law. We came for them nonetheless. So it is not a license. It is absolutely not a license to process sensitive data, and especially when you have told you seize.
What would be the difference, before I go to Kags, what would be the difference if there was no induction? If they were not inducing Kenyans and rewarding them for scanning their iris, would it be different tonight?
Maybe, maybe not. I'll go back to my concern. I said maybe, because then it would be a consent issue. But remember, consent is the weakest of the rationale of processing personal data. There are lawful bases, there's contractual obligation, there's legitimate reason, and so on. And coming back to it, is it only a data protection issue? The answer is no.
No. Okay.
Absolutely not. And I keep saying, when people ask me this question about, because often we are asked, how come data protection, is it here to hinder technology and innovation? And I say, it's about the ethical. If something feels not right, there's something ethical that you need to ask about you as an innovator. Ethical processing of data is fundamental for us as human beings and for our own as privacy.
Now that you've explained that, I'd like to paint a picture of the exact danger someone runs into when, for example, they voluntarily give that information without knowing where it's ended. One of your concerns in that statement is, where is this data ended, right? So let me paint a picture with Kags. Paint for me a picture. I go and scan my iris, and they have it. I get my money in the pocket. I have a meal for a week or so. Paint for me that picture. What is about to get wrong with that?
Okay, so let's deal with a couple of things. Number one is, what can they do with this thing? They can go and use that, your personal data, your iris. They can go and use it to create products that they will come back and sell to you, whether they're financial, and also they can use that data and sell it to somebody else. And you don't know what they're going to do it. If you remember a while ago, there was the issue of Cambridge Analytica collecting data from Facebook and then using that data to influence elections and that sort of thing. That's just because of the fact that human beings, data was actually being used as a commodity to be sold to somebody else. If you go and have your personal data being sold to another person, then you're the product. At this point, all of the hundreds of thousands of people who have currently collected their irises are products. If you go on the WorldCoin website, and here I'm talking about the red flags that I have seen so far, they're very vague about what it is that they're going to do with this data. They're also very vague about who is actually processing that data. There are 3 companies that have been able to track on their website alone so far. There is Tools for Humanity, which is the one that is
the parent company.
The parent company.
Yes.
That parent company, we don't know what the relationship is with WorldCoin Foundation, which is registered in the Caymans. Under WorldCoin Foundation, they have also registered yet another company called World Asset Limited. And even that one, we don't know what is, we don't know how that is playing. So right now, Tools for Humanity is the one that is collecting data here. But according to their website, WorldCoin Foundation is the one with a good reason to collect data. It's the one that is saying that we are going to decentralize, we're going to open source so that anybody can use the data and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But that's not who is signing contracts here with people. The person signing here contracts with people is this company that has liberty to sell that data to anyone, especially because they're saying we have a contractual obligation with people. Now let's talk about the contract for a minute. That's another red flag. If I say that I am going to reach a contract with Ken, but I am drunk, is that contract valid? It is not. If I am impaired, is that contract valid? It is not. If I come to sign a contract, but I am not aware of what it is that I am signing for, is that a valid contract? It is not. These are already established principles in law. Now, here's a situation where somebody is coming because they saw an ad or they saw information from their friends saying there are some guys giving a 7,000 bob. And the two smame in front of a circle, and then after that, they give you 7,000 bob. That's the information they have. And then they go, they stand, they're told sign here, they sign. They don't know what they're signing. The young man I told you about that I met today at the airport did not know what he was signing. I spoke to another one on the phone just today. He got the 7,000 shillings. He doesn't know what it was for. Nobody told him that he has actually sold a part of himself to the rest of the world. This is a red flag that we have to deal with. But then there's also the fact that in this law that Immaculate is overseeing here, the aspect of cross-border, taking my data from Kenya and taking it to another country is not allowed except for very specific circumstances. Now, here's a situation where there's a company here that is taking my iris, my sensitive personal information. This is not just general information like, where I work and so on. This is my person. It's like my blood. They're taking it and they're taking it somewhere else. By the way, Ken, we have to recognize that the two things that are most sensitive about a human being, the most distinguishable aspects of a human being are their DNA and their iris and their ears. If I take any one of those things and I'm able to keep it somewhere else to commercialize it the way that I want, and you don't know how you're going to benefit, that Kenyan has been taken advantage of in the same way that the Congolese person was taken advantage of for diamonds. In the same way that the Congolese person was taken advantage of for cobalt. It is the same concept. These guys are actually taking advantage of Kenyans in very insidious ways, and we have to be careful about it.
I, being a lawyer, would have talked a lot about the contract law that you just spoke about, because I know there are so many vitiating factors, but let's face this subject because the subject is important to me. So, can you recreate a unique ID such as iris?
I might not be able to recreate a unique idea like an iris. It's not possible. Mm-hmm. But I can take that information and I can use an AI system to actually learn how the different irises are concerned. Mm-hmm. And don't forget, now we're going into a place where we're going to be creating humans, robots, isn't it? Mm-hmm. We're going to use iris. We're going to give them irises. What is stopping this company from actually saying, yes, they say on their website that as soon as you scan your iris, it generates a number, a code, and then they delete it. How do we know that? How can we verify that? And what if they actually keep that information and they use it to actually recreate an iris in a robot tomorrow? It is possible. It's not out of the realm of the imagination that what they can do with it. Mm-hmm. And we don't actually know what the possibilities are, because the possibilities are endless. We are at a junction right now in the world, kind of like when the internet started. When the internet started, at least the three of us in this room were still alive. Mm-hmm. It found us here. And the fact of the matter is, we could not have imagined that today we would be able to do the kind of things that we can do with the internet. We are at that junction again, where artificial intelligence is a new frontier that we're going into. Mm-hmm. And these guys are going to be able to do anything. And the thing that artificial intelligence needs the most is data. Now, there's one other thing that I'm going to say before I let go of this. Yeah. There is only one institution that is mandated to give an ID especially based on biometrics, because it has a social contract with me, and that is the government.
Okay.
The moment a private sector entity is able to actually collect my biometrics so that it can give me a world ID or an ID of any kind, it means that there's actually a governance danger
In this.
And we have to pay attention to it.
Immaculate, a lot of questions I'm looking at is a lot of Kenyans who are concerned, who are asking, didn't the government know, even when they issued the certificate that you're talking about, that it could get to this level?
Let me say this, that we have consistently asked those questions and engaged WorldCoin because we wanted to understand the safeguard measures they are putting in place. So it's not that we were asleep. As an office, we have asked those questions. We have asked those questions to an extent where we issued a cessation certificate. It was part of looking at it, doing spot check, and I'm like, no. And to tell you, Ken, WorldCoin has been partnering and talk with other Kenyan organizations, not in the last couple of months or here or there. If you go to their website, it's listed who are their partners. And without going into the details, I think it's just the excitement of innovation as a country. Our risk appetite is very high. In fact, I dare say we dared to ask questions. If we had not dared to ask questions, perhaps we'd be talking about a different story. We dared to issue an advisory to the Kenyan public. And why? Because people are saying, why did you wait to issue an advisory? The question is, when people rely, and how much more can you do when people are saying you're consenting? You see, my role as a regulator is also to let you know, as a data subject, these are the risks, and I caution you in as far as this is concerned. And that we have done. That we have done.
Okay. So where we are currently, perhaps the other big question that I said, does it fall also on your doorstep to impart this education to Kenyans? Because this is a new frontier, we have to all admit.
Yes.
The data protection and the risks therein is not something that we'll be concerned about. That is not a conversation that a country like Kenya that is just trying to get out of the woods will be really concerned. So does that also fall within your office to ensure that Kenyans know what they're getting themselves into? That's why I started, actually.
We have the responsibility of creating awareness, and we've even we partnered with Open Institute. The last year, we went to 31 counties to just begin that journey of creating awareness. Earlier in the year, we had a campaign which was run in different media houses. We have also run social media campaign. It's not near enough. It will take a while for people to change their attitude on data protection. It's a process of partnering. This is also an opportunity, even appearing here today, to actually educate Kenyans on the risks there is when it comes to the most valued information in their life.
Okay.
Yes.
So the ones who are wondering, I have given out my information. What is my recourse as an individual right now?
The recourse as an individual one, as an office, and that's why part of the reason we are investigating. Mark you, we even wrote to WorldCoin and told them the information which you collected, make sure it is secure. We told them that. And part of our investigation now is to look at what else in as far as this is concerned. Yes.
Make sure it's secure. Ain't that part of your job? I mean, why would you give them that responsibility?
Let me explain
Yes.
what we mean by that.
Yes.
Because many times people assume that the Office of the Data Commissioner collects all this information
has a server
somewhere
to store it,
and we
yes.
store our information.
Yes.
Our role as a regulator is to make sure the principles under data protection are followed.
Okay.
So our work is to make sure you're complying. And in the instances where you're not complying, we come conduct an assessment, which is when we issued the advisory. And the reason why you're loaded with information and you want to continue assessing, and that is what we are doing in the case of WorldCoin. To embark on an investigation, that's another power we have. And we have done that. The other one is to issue what we call an enforcement notice, and we give you 30 days to comply. And the fourth one is also to also issue a penalty notice if you don't comply. In addition to that, we have the power to audit. This year alone, one of the role we are looking into moving forward is actually conducting audits to different organizations. So as an office, those are the steps we have taken to make sure we are assessing that these people, particular data control, are complying. And I keep saying, the fact that you applied for a tender, for instance, in government, there's a checklist where you say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. If you meet all the checklist of the no, the assumption is that you comply. But when it comes to implementation of the tender, if you do not fulfill, that can be cancelled, isn't it? So that is where we find ourselves in this case of WorldCoin. People who say they are doing certain things and they are not doing, we come and suspend and say we are going to investigate. And by the way, the crafters of the law gave the power to the data commissioner to also do that. One, revoke. One, change. As long as you give people a fair hearing, but you have all those powers to be able to do that. So it's not lost.
Okay. This is very hidden, Kags, from where I sit. It's very hidden. And I don't fail to notice or to note that there was no huge public outcry. There was a lot of questions. I know we are measuring on this and we should be talking about data security in general, but there was no huge public outcry in terms of what was happening. I think the only public outcry was what's happening. People did not understand, which means there was missing information. So where do you come as Open Institute? What do you tell people regarding the security of their data?
So we started working in the data governance space a few years back, and as soon as the ODPC was established, we were, I think, one of the first organizations to rush and say, how can we work with you guys to help? Because we learned a couple of things. We currently have a campaign called Ficha Uchi, which is hashtag Ficha Uchi on all the social media. And the purpose of Ficha Uchi is hide your nakedness. Right? Well, that's what
literally.
Literally, hide your nakedness, because your data is your nakedness. It's you. It's your person. And what we are saying what we started by asking people is a number of questions. One, what is data? People know data is bundles. Number two, we ask them, what do you understand as a cookie? Every website you go to says, which cookies do you accept, isn't it? So we asked them.
I don't even know what that is.
What are cookies?
Accept those cookies to proceed.
There you go.
I don't know.
Do you know what it turns out people know cookies as? Ni biscuti. Right? And you're beginning to confess that you might be one of those guys.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. We found that it was necessary to start going to people and saying, when you take a picture in front of your car and I can see the number plate, you've just given me information that I can use against you. When you put a check that you have been given by somebody and I can see your account number on the check. There's a young lady who did that last week or the week before. I could tell the account number of that check. I already know what her account number is. Those are sensitive data that you should not be putting out. If you're going to put out your phone number or the phone number of somebody you care about, it is a wrong thing to do. So the thing that we have been doing is trying to begin to sensitize people as much as possible, and we've actually spent a lot of energy over the last couple of years. I think on that social media campaign, the first time we reached about 7 million people. This time I think we are at the 5 million mark, and we're still going on. And we're trying to make sure that people begin to understand. Then after that, we're going into the counties and making sure that our officials themselves begin to understand how sensitive this is. Immaculate just told you that these guys have partners. One of those partners is the county of Nairobi. We need to go to the county of Nairobi and say, guys, these guys are not doing a good thing for Kenyans. You should not partner with them in that way that you're partnering with them, because you might be exposing people to danger. We need to make sure that people begin to understand, because of the fact that it's not the government's job to protect every aspect of our lives, and we obviously don't want government in every aspect of our lives, but we do want to make sure that Ponzi schemes don't happen based on our data. We want to make sure that massive number of people are not taken advantage of. I want to really congratulate Immaculate and the CS Kindiki for the steps. You know, Kenya is actually the first country, I think, that has actually taken action on this thing and stopped them. Everybody else is kind of investigating and trying to figure out what to do about it. Kenya has taken a bold step. Whereas we are very much for innovation as a country, whereas we are very much for trying to make sure that we are ahead of the game in this space that is coming up of artificial intelligence, we must do it transparently. So if this, you're asking about recourse, if this company was actually very transparent, that we are collecting this data, this is the company that is collecting the data, this is how we are handling the data, this is who is processing the data, this is where we are keeping the data. If they are transparent to you like that, then you can be able to make clear decisions about whether or not you want to participate. When Facebook does it, they don't actually take our data in hiding. They take it openly. So at least we know, okay, for me to participate, I can choose whether or not to do this. But when they're taking advantage of my desperation in terms of...
But it's also been a big debate, we have to agree.
Yes.
In the US about the kind of data that is on Facebook.
It's even here, even here, it's a big conversation. But the fact of the matter is, we are now getting to new grounds with this WorldCoin story. We are now getting to new grounds of invasiveness.
I know it's not your space to talk about, but perhaps just out of being a Kenyan, what do you think drives Kenyans to such things? Because I would not do it, for example.
I was given the answer by the young man I met at the airport. He said, how can I let go of 7,000 shillings? Do you know what 7,000 shillings can do for my life? So I asked him, so do you still have that 7,000? He said, no, I don't. I paid my rent. Do you see where we're coming from?
If today her office okayed this, I'm sure Kenyans will still be running. I'm sure they will still be running to take their irises to be scanned.
Yes.
That is the question.
In fact, I was actually speaking to somebody today and I was saying that the truth of the matter is, as Kenyans, we are in such desperate times economically that if somebody says, you come and give me a blood sample and I'll give you 1,000 shillings, they will have a mile long. This entire Mombasa Road will be stretched with people ready to give out a sample of their blood without knowing where their blood is being taken, whether it is going to be used for stem cell research or something. They don't know, but they will give.
Okay. So, Immaculate, this is a very tough balancing act for the government that obviously needs to grow the country in terms of technology and open this space and be in the world map for such advancement. So it's a tough balancing act. So at some point, we must find where it's balancing. But my question is, sitting in the government as a regulator, what would be the ideal point that now such things should happen? Because I'm thinking probably from what you're telling me, we have grown so fast without making other considerations that are important to us.
I think some of the gaps I see is for us to begin having a conversation with this very emerging technology, AI, Internet of Things, and it's not unique to Kenya. The only country I think in Africa which has a regulatory of sort is Namibia, where they have recently said this. They are looking at that space, is to look at them and give a framework. And even the United Nations recently realized the risk of artificial intelligence through UNESCO, and they're giving statement in terms of framework of guiding what needs to happen. The EU has also done the same. And I know that my CS has spoken to these things as some of the way that the ministry is looking into the future of regulating some of this emerging technology. That is one. Because what it does, it helps us differentiate ethical and unethical. We will be saying, when it comes to certain things, as a human, you can only do A, B, C, and D, because then it helps the cause of humanity. That way, when you do put that framework, legal framework, then that way we are able to guide the process. The challenge we have many times, because when I said we have young, high-risk takers. Even today we are discussing WorldCoin. Tomorrow something else will emerge online. We give them a gadget, which is called a mobile phone. They spend a lot of time, if you have youth, playing games, exploring the internet. Some of the question my 12-year-old asks, I don't even have answers. The world is the limit. They find out. So you see, we are the ones trying to catch up with them. I think the responsibility for us jointly as a country is to agree on what is doable and what is not doable as a country. As a regulator, therefore, the reason we step in very strongly on this issue, it's because beyond us, it touches on other issues, like Al has said. Which private organization collects irises which one? And it is true, it should worry us. 2, on consumer protection, same thing is talking about, on consumer protection. What will it mean, or what does this look like for you in 5 years? When one person or institution has all this information, it's a monopoly you're creating in one way or another, whether there's, that is the other issue. The other issue is, if there's a breach, because you see, if there was a breach about your name and your ID, it's not as significant if there was a breach about your iris and your biometrics. The risk is too high. The risk is too high. And then, also, of course, the other thing, and then also the issue of giving people incentives. Can you allow people to make informed decision? Not giving them, give this because you're looking at them and you see like they're going to take what you're offering as quickly as possible. So it's a worrisome that we have people running to volunteer their personal information without stopping to ask why. And at times, even when you give a guidance note like we did last week, and have constitutionally pushed back on this particular issue of WorldCoin, people are still not listening. People are still saying, oh, for what? You see?
What does it matter?
Yeah, what does it matter?
It's mine.
Yeah.
It's mine, yeah.
Yeah, and then trying to hide behind that by producing so much information, you say, I can go ahead, yes.
But there must be a positive to having such data, especially in terms of general security. Don't you find from where you sit that there could be a positive to this?
Like I said, there are 7 or 8 reasons why you process personal data. It doesn't say do not process personal data. It guides. If you're processing personal data, do A, B, C, and D. And sensitive, let's say sensitive, because there's a distinction between personal data and sensitive. Sensitive comes to the lawful basis, for instance. National Registration Bureau collects our personal information for purposes of issuing us with an ID. True? Immigration collects for purposes of issuing us with a passport. It's a positive. The reason why that information is being collected. If, for instance, you and your employer, there's a contractual obligation. They collect your personal information to be able to determine for you your contract, your insurance, your pay benefits. That's a positive. What we call a legitimate interest. If you're a customer in the bank or in an insurance company, they collect your personal information, and even when they collect it, they must tell you. But you see, there's a legitimate interest because you have said that you're their customers. You see, those are reasons why personal information is collected. What this law does is to guide and regulate, so that I keep saying the Data Protection Act came to call us to order. It came to call us to order so that this right, which we say right to privacy, is upheld.
Okay.
It came to call us to order as humans to say, wait a minute, I'm a person. You do not need to know everything about me, everything about my family. And if you want to, ask me, and there must be these other reasons why you're processing my personal information.
Okay, so it's stated data collection and mining this data has been a huge issue. I just wish that I would get into that, but I think I'll be treading to a very huge ground that will not be able to finish. But for those people who are saying it doesn't matter, let me shoulder my own burden. If they are going to use my data to create robots and all those things, whatever they're going to use it for, it doesn't matter.
In fact, somebody said just yesterday on a tweet that I'll be long dead by the time they are using my data, so let them go ahead and use it. The problem is this. As a country, we have found ourselves on the back foot for years simply because of the fact that we did not protect our resources. One of the biggest resources that we have to be very proactive in protecting going forward is our digital resources, and our data is a massive component of that, because data is what is going to drive. Data is the main resource that is going to drive artificial intelligence development. Data is the main thing that is going to drive the tools of the future. So how we protect that raw material is going to be very important towards how our children are going to be, whether they're going to remain on the back foot economically, or whether we're actually going to catch up with the rest of the world. In terms of what I think should happen in the future, there's a couple of things that, and I wanted to add to what Immaculate was saying just now. One is that I think that we need, as a region, to start working together, not just here in Kenya, because there's this thing called the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Initiative that is happening on the continental level. We as East Africa need to start having a conversation, the same way Europe had a conversation and decided data governance within Europe is going to look like this. We need to start having that conversation here within our region. We have 100 million market. We have to begin to have a conversation about what that raw material is going to do to benefit this market. So that's the first thing that we have to do. We have to have a convention, and we have to begin having those conversations. The second thing is that we have to have a serious consumer protection law, because this WorldCoin issue, not only is it a data protection issue, but it's also a consumer protection issue. What are you going to do with these consumers that you are taking advantage of? And the third thing that I think as a country we need to do, and I hope this reaches the president, is that we have to establish tech diplomats who begin to positively and proactively engage with the tech community around the world, so that there's a clear agreement about how they come into this market before they come.
Okay. We are running out of time. There's a question that I have to ask you. Up to the point we are, I know you have said, and the CS said, this is a multi-ministerial approach to this. Up to where we are, Immaculate, do you and your office take responsibility for what has happened to Kenyans in the last few days that we have seen them lining? And what will be the recourse, if at all, with what we're saying here, they are now more aware of the danger that they expose themselves to? Would you and your office take responsibility for what has happened to Kenyans, and how would you mitigate this?
I will say the following. We issued an advisory as an office. There are ways of addressing this. You can file a complaint to us as an office. That is welcome. You can file a complaint online on this particular issue. In addition to what we've already done, we've embarked on an investigation, and as of today, we wrote specifically to WorldCoin to tell them to cease and desist from processing any further data. We wrote a reminder to them to tell them to cease. So upon investigation, we have those options. Our options are enforcement notice and penalty notice, which are up to 5 million shillings or 1% of the previous year. So those are options available to the Office of the Data Commissioner. And the reason I say it's multi-sectoral, I've explained earlier, that it is not limited to data protection. We stated that in the earlier press release we released with the Communication Authority. It's cybersecurity issue. It's matters of storage of information. It is issues about crypto and swapping the information that they are. And also, in addition to that, the other issue is the other issue that I would also want to say is it's really a clarion call around this issue, that we as Kenyans also have a primary responsibility to also start asking questions about our information. Because remember, you can only regulate so much. There's so much happening in the internet space. And that is why the crafters of this regulation foresaw that. And they said self-regulation is the starting point. And as an office, some of the other mechanisms we are doing, realizing that this is a very broad space, we are onboarding auditors, audit firms, which can be joint ventures. We are onboarding other government, other institutions to help us in terms of awareness creation and also to help, because we also want to make sure that the ecosystem is safe. Yes.
Okay, but I didn't hear anything that you said about what Kenyans, you've said what they can come, but for a farm that is giving 7,000 shillings per every head with the hundreds or tens of thousands of gone there, they can surely afford this fine, and they shall have gone with this.
I often say matters data protection, monetary is one, reputation is another. Because globally, you do not want to be the company that is not adhering to data protection practices.
Okay.
What that has serious implication as far as
Globally,
data protection is concerned.
All
and
right.
we are living in a global world where transfer of data is common, cross-trade is common, the African trade has been talked about. You don't want to be on the line on that particular issue.
Okay, the video of the week has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with what we are talking about, but I like to play the video of, actually it's not a video of the week, it's the picture of the week. Then I'll come to you for your closing remarks. What you will tell Kenyans about this is very important from the Open Institute, and what Immaculate will tell Kenyans going forward about this. But let's bring up now the picture of the week. And post somewhere again the picture of the week. I know you can post it somewhere because I'd like to read it. Can we have it back? All right, you can hold it there, right? So this is about vote for nobody. Nobody will keep election promises. Nobody will listen to your concerns. Nobody will help the poor, and nobody cares. If nobody is elected, things will be better for everyone because nobody tells the truth. Now, this is our picture of the week. Has nothing to do with Immaculate and, of course, Kags. But that's the picture of the week. We have about 2 minutes to close this. So I'll give you your final remarks. I know I'm educated tonight, especially on data, and she's told us what regulation is all about. And more important, it starts with me. But I'd like to give you 1 minute for your closing remarks.
I think the biggest thing that I will tell Kenyans is this: care about this thing and educate yourself about this thing, because it is crucially important. It is crucially important for you to realize that your data is your commodity, and you should be able to benefit from how it is used by anyone, and you should begin to protect it. Because if you protect your title deed, if you protect your logbook, before you protect those ones, protect yourself and protect your children. Your data is as important, if not more important, than those documents that you cherish and care for.
Thank you, Alkat. And finally, Immaculate.
Ken, it's been great to be here in terms of awareness creation. One of the things I want to say, as an office, we are here to safeguard the data of Kenyans. And that is one of the steps we have taken by seizing operation of WorldCoin moving forward as we undertake investigation. If any Kenya has any complaint as far as this is concerned, they are welcome to actually complain to our office. But most importantly, let us be our own keepers. Let's ask the questions when it comes to data protection. As a regulator, we are here to make sure that people's information is protected. And we are the first one in Africa to actually ask questions in as far as collection of iris is concerned.
Okay. Very well said, and we keep learning every single day. I, for example, did not know this, but at least I knew better to go and scan my iris, right? Our biometrics are all over the world if you travel, but again, you need to protect. Need I belabor, because it's been said by Kags and, of course, Immaculate. Thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing that with us.